Welcome to Dashboard Jesus, the podcast where faith meets the fast lane. Whether you're cruising through calm or navigating life's hairpin turns, we're here to help keep your eyes on the road and your heart grounded in God's Word. So buckle up. It's time to ride with a biblical perspective on the journey of life. Here's your host, Peter Heck.
Welcome to the Dashboard Jesus podcast. I'm your host, Peter Heck. It's great to have you here for the first ever audio and video podcast. We've been doing this audio, and so a lot of you just listening to the podcast the way you always have from Spotify, from Apple, whatever it may be, wherever you get it. But I thought, since this is the Dashboard Jesus podcast, where what we focus on a weekly basis, sometimes we look at cultural things, sometimes we look at even political things, sometimes we look at strictly theological things, but the whole point of it is, how can we as believers live faithfully in an increasingly faithless world? How can Jesus be on our dashboard guiding us where we need to go? That's the whole premise of it. And it's going to be different than the rest of the world. How do we set ourselves apart? So in thinking about that, I thought, what better way to make that point that we're different than everybody else and we live differently than everybody else than to start doing my podcast the way everybody else does it. Video, audio, that to me is a great message to send. So here we are. I'm going to play a video if you're watching, an audio clip for you if you're just listening. And I want to speak about this on the podcast today. I want to look at it. I'm going to be honest, I don't know when this happened. I don't know when Eduard Löwen, who is a soccer star apparently, I don't know when he lost his wife. And when I heard the clip on social media, I thought, well, before I cover this, I really need to find out, did this happen recently or is this a really old story? Because if it's a really old story, well, then it doesn't apply. It's nonsense. The more I thought about it and what this is about, it is completely applicable whether or not Eduard Löwen lost his wife 2 days ago or 2 years ago. We as human beings often say things to try to comfort ourselves in moments of loss. We say things even in good times. We say things when we're having conversation with people, sometimes just to have something to say. And we'll say things like, well, God is enough. God is enough. And especially for believers, that's a common phrase. God is enough. He's my portion. He's all I need. But what do we actually mean by that? Do we mean that God is good enough to come along on the ride with us? Or do we mean God is enough, I don't need anything else? Is God enough when life is good, or is God enough when life is gone? Have a friend who is going through some very, very difficult medical circumstances. They may not survive. And what they have spoken to me about is their perspective and how much it's changed from what it was going day to day without a firm reliance on God. Because, as he put it, I didn't think I needed him. I was able to just function on my own. And actually, that isn't true. The very breath in our lungs, of course, comes from God. It's just that we are not cognizant of it. We're not aware of it. If we lost everything, would God be enough? Where would your faith stand if everything that meant anything to you in your life disappeared? Would your joy still exist? Would God still be enough? Let me play this clip for you of soccer star Eduard Löwen.
My world has been shattered, and I still don't understand it, and probably never will. And still I can say with confidence that God is enough, that He is my everything, and that I have joy thinking of my sweet Ilona. In the assurance that there's somebody who loves her way, way more than I ever could. She's in eternity, and I will meet her one day. I've lost the most precious thing in my life, and I can still tell you that my purpose hasn't changed, and that God is enough, because as much as I loved her, there's somebody that I love more, and that is Jesus. And my question for you is, what are you waiting for? There is nothing on this earth that compares to what God can give.
I'm sorry, that's not normal. I don't mean that as an insult. I think it's a very good thing, but it's not normal. This is not something that is natural. That's not something that the world can explain, but it is something that the Bible prepares us for. It is something that Christians can be prepared for. There is a verse in Philippians that Paul writes, and we often study it, we often say it, we recite it, where he says, I count everything as loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. Those are actually shocking words, that I count everything as loss. Not I count everything as less important, but everything else can be gone. Everything else can disappear. And if I still have Christ in my life, that's enough. You do realize that's exactly what Eduard Löwen is saying. Having gone through something that I can't imagine, some of you maybe have gone through it, and you would say to me, it's unimaginable unless you've gone through it. Eduard Löwen is saying these words that I believe intellectually. But until you're in that circumstance, it's very difficult to say, well, this is how I would react. I hope that's how I would react. It's how a Christian should react. Most people, and when I say most people, I'm including believers, most of us treat God as some kind of support in our lives. And we even say things like that, well, God helps me through. He helps me through the tough times. He gets me through the rough times, all of that stuff. What Eduard is saying here only makes sense if Christ, if God is not part of his foundation. He must be his entire foundation. Christ is the foundation of his life. Otherwise, those words, they couldn't be said. Because here's the reality. If Christ is just a part of your life, and for many of us, too often, that is the case. If Christ is just a part of your life, he's not going to be enough when things fall apart. And the truth is that things fall apart in this life. If he is your life, then not even the most serious loss can take everything from you, because he is everything to you. The world builds life on circumstances. The Christian builds a life on Christ. Sometimes people talk about this idea of hope. What is hope? Well, you're seeing what real hope is in that clip. I don't know if you have that hope. I hope that you do. I hope that I do. But too often, we adopt the worldly idea of hope, which is really just wishful thinking. We're hoping that circumstances will change. Okay, that's not really hope. What it is wishful thinking. If I could have a wish come true, it would be that these circumstances around me would change. But in 1 Thessalonians, Paul writes and says, we do not grieve as others who do not have hope. Okay, what does the world say in moments like Eduard Löwen just dealt with, the loss of a spouse? What does the world say in those moments? It doesn't even have to be a spouse. It could be a mom, a dad, a brother, a son, a daughter, somebody very close to us. What does the world say? You can buy all of the self-help books. You can buy all of the grieving books that the world has to offer. And here's what the world is going to say. Cope. Learn how to cope. Say things like, well, she lives on in our memory. Say things like, well, time heals all wounds. Say things like, well, at least we had some time together. And by the way, all of those things may be true in a certain respect, but that isn't hope. You heard what hope is. Löwen said it himself. She is with Christ, and I will see her again. I think that was the line. Oh, sorry. She is in eternity, and I will meet her one day. That is not sentiment. That is not what the world offers of wishful thinking. That is not coping mechanism. That's doctrine, is what that is. That is theology. That is Christianity buried so deep in one's heart that it now becomes who and what they are in a moment that they need it most. This is theology that is rooted in the resurrection. Christianity is not out there saying, don't grieve. It's saying, grieve with hope. And that's exactly what he's offering. I really think it's important that we see the contrast. This is, when I'm trying to talk to people about the value of Christianity, the value of the Christian worldview, this is the kind of stuff that lands. This is the kind of stuff that matters. The world offers coping mechanisms. Christianity offers the resurrection. Those are the two different things. What is it you want in a moment like Eduard Löwen? Do you want coping mechanisms, or do you want the resurrection of the dead? I mean, that right there sets Christianity apart from everything else in the world. All of the wide path, all of the other religions, all of the other belief systems, all the other ideologies, lump them all together. They're the ideas of man, they're the philosophy of man, and they're the wide gate that leads to destruction. And all that they say in those moments, coping mechanisms, here's how you handle it. Over here, the narrow path that leads to the Father, you have the resurrection. What does that look like? What kind of difference does that make? How about this? The world and its coping mechanisms, their strategy is to soften death. That's what those phrases mean. When you say things like that, well, she lives on in your memory. Time is going to heal the wounds. You did have time together. Remember the good times. Those are coping mechanisms. They're trying to soften the blow of death. That's nice. Now, what's your other option with Christianity? The other option is, instead of softening the blow of death, Christianity says defeat death. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, this is, you can cope or you've got the resurrection. You can try to soften death or you can defeat death. What does the world offer? The world offers its final, I don't want to say final solution, its final end. This is where it leads to closure. You can turn the page and have closure. At least that's what it's promising. So you got the steps of the world here. Coping mechanisms to help soften death and eventually bring about closure. Can I tell you what Christianity offers? It's exactly what you're hearing in Eduard Löwen's words. It doesn't say cope so you can soften death and eventually receive and get and gain closure. What Christianity says is the resurrection defeats death. And how about a reunion? That is why we do not grieve as those without hope. You know the most shocking thing that Eduard Löwen had to say? The part that's going to really rub some people the wrong way. You heard it, and I want to talk about it right after this. Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foresight Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Thanks for tuning into the Dashboard Jesus podcast. Let me say this up front. This show doesn't run on fumes. It runs on good people. People I know, people I trust, people who have stood behind this podcast and other ventures of mine for years. First Rab Water, the team I trust for all of our home water purification. If you care about what's coming into your home and into your family, you need to talk to them. They've taken great care of us, and I recommend them without hesitation. I'm also grateful for friends like Jonathan at Hartman Family Farms, my bank, First Farmers Bank and Trust, my lawn care team at Harper Implement, Norris Insurance, who make sure we're covered when life gets unpredictable, and McGonigal GM Buick, the folks I trust whenever it's time to buy or lease a vehicle. Then there's J. Watson Creations, the jeweler I go to for custom pieces for the people that I love. Stevens Machine, one of my longest-standing supporters. Terrell's Auto Service, who keeps our vehicles running. The Wyman Group, my go-to real estate team. And organizations like the Indiana Family Institute and Indiana Right to Life, people doing the hard work of standing for faith, family, and life in the public square. These aren't random sponsors. These are relationships, and I'm grateful for every single one of them. If you support them, you're helping support this podcast, and I truly appreciate it. Back here on the Dashboard Jesus podcast, thanks for tuning in today, and thanks for those of you who are members of our pit crew. You all received your extra mile before the podcast came out this week. This week on the Extra Mile, we took a look at a recent Disney ad and talked about why it landed so well, which is odd with it being Disney. And people are saying, oh, they're going back to their roots. I wouldn't hold my breath. But the bigger conversation is to understand why that ad landed so well. And we talked about it. If you remember the pit crew, you got that extra bit, the extra mile as we call it. Would love to have all of you part of that pit crew. You help this ministry continue to go. You can check that out if you just go to peterheck.com and click to join our community. Would love that. All right, before the break, we're talking about Eduard Löwen. Let me play for you this soccer star, the most stunning thing, shocking thing that he said in the memorial service for his recently deceased wife. Listen to this.
Because as much as I loved her, there's somebody that I love more, and that is Jesus.
I'm telling you, that right there is offensive to modern ears. It is. It's foolishness and it's offensive to modern ears. It's sort of like when you read Jesus, when he says in Luke 14:26, you know the line I'm talking about, where he says, whoever loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. You should hate your mother and father in comparison to your love for me. That's what he's saying. Well, how egotistical. That's the kind of stuff that we're tempted to say. How arrogant. And here's this guy saying in this clip, as much as I loved her, there's something I love more, and that is Jesus. That's his line right there. Here's what the world doesn't understand. Jesus is not competing with our loves. He is ordering them, rightly ordering them. And why? So that we don't put too big of a weight on something that is not capable of carrying it. That's the key. If your entire life, if you love another individual so much that your entire world and identity is wrapped up in them, when you lose them, you lose everything. But to one who has rightly ordered their loves, who loves Christ, who gave us that other individual that we love so much, when we love Christ more, even when that other individual leaves or we lose them, we are not lost. That's what he's getting at right here. The world is saying the highest love is human love, and that's why when you lose it, it destroys you. But Jesus is saying the highest love is the love that I have towards you and that you return to me. That doesn't make love weaker. It makes it stronger and it makes it safer. This is, in a world that says your identity and your joy and your purpose are built on what you have, Christianity is saying no. This is what makes us different. Your life is built on who you have, and that's Christ. The last line that Löwen has there in his talk is to ask those in the audience, what are you waiting for? And I would say the same to you. Because if Christ is not your everything now, he's not going to suddenly become that once everything else around you is gone. Let's be wise. Have a great one. We'll see you again next time right here on the Dashboard Jesus podcast.